I can't imagine any circumstance in his life that we're unaware of where he would have been. I think it was jarring. I think we should note that he was there pretty briefly. His aides filled out the paperwork about his vitals, his weight, his height, and so forth, his eye color, all the things that are there ahead of time, and it expedited the process, but I think even briefly it's a very jarring experience, as we said before. This is not something that he's craving. I understand that he is using the mugshot politically. It would be very surprising were he not when there wasn't a mugshot in Manhattan when he was indicted and then arrested in April. They generated a fake one, so it's not a surprise that he's using it. But this is not an experience that he wants. This is an experience that I think brings home the stark reality of what this is, which is a criminal case. And to your point about where he was headed today and how grim the circumstance things are and how grim the location was, they've done very little. They've had sort of descending appearances and public statements from him since the second indictment, where the second determined he had yet another, as he did with the first one, an event at one of his clubs. And he gave a big speech, a very defiant speech. He hasn't done that the last 2 times. And I think that is partly a recognition of a diminishing returns, possibly in fundraising, but also concerned that his legal team has about some of what he is saying, both in terms of possibly violating the conditions of his release in these cases, and in terms of saying things that could be problematic in court. And that just again, this is dealing with something real. This is not politics. This is not a game. We don't know what will happen in these cases. And he has the presumption of innocence, just like any other defendant. But this is a serious thing. It's obviously notable that he's switched several hours before he went to go be arrested in Georgia. My understanding, Jake, is this had been in the works for several weeks. He was always planning on adding to the team. Soweto had been in discussions with Trump's world for some time, as I understand it, in Trump. I think only recently was introduced to him, but there was a decision to let his other lawyer, Drew, finally go. And that came in the wake of the indictment. It seemed specific to it. My understanding is that Trump wanted what he considered a stronger team, say now, as you know, has an incredibly good reputation in the state, and I think came very highly recommended to Trump. But it is a sign that Trump recognizes the significance and severity and seriousness of these charges too. Because in his mind, he didn't concede. And that has been how he has operated for decade after decade after decade, through business failures, through bankruptcies of his casinos, through losses, through products failing, through divorces. It has all been if you pretend it is not happening, if you create your own reality, if you don't give in to what other people are acknowledging as objective reality, then maybe it really isn't there. And he is somebody who does not think in terms of long-term strategy. He thinks in very short increments of time. And it's all about just getting from one post to another. And so that is how somebody thinks like that. It's also how somebody thinks who has lived, Jake. And this doesn't really get said, I think, enough about him. He lived a fairly consequence-free life before he was president. The bankruptcies caused the banks. Now, he did not like the press. He was very unhappy about it. But the bankruptcies were a loss to the banks generally. He had his father to help bail him out. He has moved from one thing to another without having to really face the kind of consequences that other people might have in similar circumstances. So this is an unusual moment.